It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Humanity Junction. My name is Heath, and this is Modeling Monday. Today's format's going to be a little bit different than previous. We're still going to have all the same guests. We're still going to have all the same projects. But in the middle, I'm going to add in sort of an interview / conversation about a specific topic. So tonight, we've got petroleum by rail. We're going to talk about tank cars and petroleum industries and all that kind of stuff, and how we can model those on our own models. On the left side of the screen, we've got the Model Railroading live streams list going on, as well as some of the regular shows in the Model Railroading community. If you do not see your name on that list, but you'd like to be added, please send an email to one of the Sidetrack Sunday crew, myself, John from Schuylkill River Valley, Jason the Train Freak, Ray Boble, or who did I miss? Rick Bailey. And we'll get that added. It gets updated every couple of months, and so it'll be there when we can. Oh, good. Royce's interesting timing. It just got a bunch of modern tank cars. Yeah, and we're going to talk about 21st century, and I wrote down some questions as well as to what's different now than what was previous. So let's say hello to a couple people, and then we'll invite up some of our modelers tonight. We got Almar joining us. We got Bang Got You Junction, Carl Braun. Colin White's in the house. Dad Cook's joining us as well. David Atkins is here. Drew Dude Model Trains, Dwight Curley. We've got Lynn McCurdy. We've got Nisi J, the Crossing Signal. Norm Miller's in the house. Roy Eltham is joining us as well. If you haven't commented recently, you don't show up on my participants list, but I do thank everyone for being here this evening. One other thing to mention, I do have an email list. I'm started sending it out just before this stream, figuring it's kind of a notice about what's going on for my Modeling Monday stream, but it also has some of the recent stream information from different streams that just happened. If you want to get on the email list, if you go to email.humancity.org, you can find the link down in the description below. You can jump on that email list and then come hang out. So let's bring up. We got looks like 4 people hanging out down below. Let's bring them all up and say hello. See how people are doing. Oh, let me actually turn on their names too, because that might help. Because then we'll all know who they are. But we got Greg from Midsummer Railway. We have Shane's Trains. We have Adam Cruz, and we have Flying Crow. What's up, gentlemen?
Good morning.
How you doing, Heath?
Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Someone's making a little bit of background noise. Yeah, Adam, you got a little bit of background noise going on, just so you know. I don't know what it's from, but oh, and of course, last but not least, Mr. Train Freaks. I'm shocked to hear you're having microphone issues.
What's your fault?
I'm sure it is. You're like really quiet, as if you're like in the red room in the corner. Always. So let's start with Greg. Greg, what projects are you working on these days? What's going on in your world?
Well, haven't done much of it. Really got married last Saturday, so I've done good stuff, but I'm hoping to work on today. I'm going to put that a little bit closer if you can see it. That's my in-scale bus.
Your N-scale bus? Is it it's motorized bus or just a
No, it's motorized.
Yeah, Greg, we're noticing you're clipping a lot. I don't know if your mic's up kind of loud, but
How's that? Is that better?
yep, that's definitely better.
So, hang on, I'll turn.
It's still a little bit loud, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Go to somebody else and I'll turn down some of the stuff on my, I think the compressor is over
Let's check in with, I'm going to mute you, Greg, while you're playing around. Adam, how you doing? This is your first time on Modeling Monday, but you did check in on one of my tech streams. So why don't you say hello, tell people who you are, and tell us what you're working on tonight. Oh,
Trying to see if I can get through all these technical difficulties on my end.
yeah, you seem to be locked up a little bit.
I'm delayed.
See, Heath, why you got to be giving problems? You gave it to me, now you're giving it to Adam. I mean, what's the deal, man?
I know. It's
great.
the way I roll. That's the blame.
Anyway, I have.
I think Adam is still frozen, making
Can you at least hear?
making a face. We'll come back to you, Adam. Mr. Flying Crow.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. See, Robert doesn't have any problems. Why can't you be more like Robert?
Yeah. You know what I did tonight? I have done 2 things. I actually put some more RAM in my computer this afternoon.
That probably helps.
And I'm plugged in. I'm not on Wi-Fi. So.
You hear that, Jason?
What's that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What?
Huh?
Yeah. So I'm gonna be continuing on with my silos for my cement factory. So.
Awesome.
You know. And I'm anxious tonight to talk about the oil stuff. So.
Good. Yeah. Cliff, who just joined us, who people see on our screen, is our. I'd say he qualifies as an expert. We'll get to his background in a little bit.
Let's see if he can tell me anything about the 70s, though. See, it's not modern. I want the 70s. So
maybe we'll see. We'll see what he has to say. So Jason, what's up with you tonight? What are you working on? You got any lick and stick decals tonight?
No, I'm actually waiting on them to come in. So it's kind of one of those things. No, I felt like tonight I'd just help you watch chat, since I ain't got nothing to work on right now.
Good. So I'll try and keep Cliff and I on track, and then you can try and keep the chat on track. Which I don't know who has the harder job. Shane, sir, how you doing?
Good. How is everybody?
Fantastic. It's funny when people drop out. I can't remember who it is sometimes. So So Robert, who says that he's got everything solved, it looks like we just lost, but we'll get back to him. So Shane, you got some new LEDs. Is that the project for tonight?
Yep, they came in today. I ordered them a few days ago from Evans Design, and they are the smallest lights I've ever seen in my life. So here in a
Awesome.
little bit, we'll adjust the camera around to get it pointed down at the workbench here, and I can show you guys these LEDs.
Awesome. So we're going to skip Cliff for a little bit because we'll come back to him when we're ready for him. And Lynn, Mr. McCurdy over there from Twin Peak Railroad, how you doing, sir?
Fine. You notice anything? You can see my ears and
What? I don't even. I'm just happy I recognized you. If you shaved your mustache, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
But we kept these. These are still here.
They are. They are.
Busy weekend. Train show up at Ridgecrest. Small turnout. We put out a donation bucket and paid for the gas anyways. But,
Nice.
I don't know if you heard about my near-death experience Saturday morning.
I did not. Is it train related or is it?
Well, on the way to the train show, I picked up one of the other members and we're driving up the highway, literally middle of nowhere, 25 miles, almost a straight road. Early in the morning, we're chit-chatting cars once in a while. I see this car coming at me, and all of a sudden the guy behind him decided to pass head on.
Oh.
And no time to think. Hit the brakes, yanked to the right, and he realized he messed up, so he whipped back. Unfortunately, the car he was passing hit their brakes, and he hit them, did a pit maneuver, spun them all the way out into the desert, and his car burst into flames. So I'm fine. My partner that was with me is fine. We did have to wait for the California Highway Patrol, the Forestry, the Fire Department. Border Patrol showed up, BLM, Bureau of Land and Management. They shut down, and the highway, if anybody knows California, 395, it is a major route and a death trap. And
Wow.
All, you know, how they talk about your life flashes in front of you. I didn't have time to think about it. It just happened, and I'm looking in the mirrors, car parts and flames, and I'm on 911.
So after the train show, though, you're still talking about that. So was that the most memorable part of the train show, or was there something exciting at the train show as well?
I've got something to share.
Awesome.
Any of you know who Tina Marie is with Mojave Model Railroad?
A lot of us do, yes.
Yep.
She came down in person.
Oh.
And she videotaped us. She videotaped the Eastern Sierra Railroad Society's layout. That was the whole purpose. They had an open house and we were given a building. In fact, they offered us a building 3 times as big, which there's no way we could fill it. We have no problem filling it. We just don't have the manpower. We need about 50 people and we only have 17. But she came down, did her interviews with me, the club president, Benny, the shipbuilder, spent the whole day with us, gave away T-shirts to some of the children. I sold her a box of trains. Then she texted me yesterday morning that none of the audio worked.
Oh, no.
She didn't test it. She's all apologetic. So we're supposed to get together. And you know how the Japanese, Godzilla, and, Godzilla, and they go, Godzilla.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be like that because we're going to try to review the tape and respond to what was said. We'll see how that works out. It's cool. It's all good.
Yeah. Tina Marie and I have had some little side conversations about some of the tech stuff, and we talk about all those problems that you run into that, sometimes you do test it 20 times and then you go and do a show and it all kind of falls apart. But Adam, while you're still moving around and while we can still see you, why don't you let people know a little bit about who you are? Because I know we see you in the chat a lot, but we don't get to hear from you much. So you want to tell us who you are and what you got going on?
Yeah, OBS was killing my stream, so I just switched off of it. But
Gotcha.
From Denver, HO scale. I'm with the National Model Railroad Museum, the Sunrise Division, and your Sunrise Trail. So that's how we got to differentiate that.
Yeah.
Currently working on, I have a California Zephyr set, a Denver Zephyr set, and my Amtrak Superliner set that I'm working on. So tonight I'm going to be trying to decal at least some of these Anthern Streamline cars, because I have 9 of them, and I have 11 Walthers mainline Bud cars to decal yet too.
So when you say working on, they're all undecorated passenger cars, and you're going to do all the decals, the weathering, and all the 9 yards on them?
Switch cameras here for a second, and I'll show you what I'm got planned. So I got all the decals laid out. If it'll switch over.
Yeah, we can see it.
All those cars minus the Pennsylvania one on the end that I want to try to get all set up. So yesterday I spent 4 or 5 hours cutting out all the decals that I needed for the 15, 16 cars I have. So
yeah,
that'll be fun.
Nice. So I'm still learning some of the features of this new streaming software, and apparently when you have this many people on, it doesn't let you highlight one person. Oh wait, that's not true. That's not true. I can do it like this. There we go. Well, now we know for next time. Now we know for next time. But awesome. We'll check. So unless anybody's got something. Oh, I'm going to talk about my thing in a second too that I'm still working on. But anyone on panel got anything else they want to talk about before I discuss my thing, and then we move on to Cliff a little bit?
Go for it.
Awesome. So as people know, I've been working on I'm going to make myself big now that I figured that part out. I've been working on the NMRBO Walthers setup. You'll see I've got an Amtrak passenger car, not exactly the correct piece of rolling stock for this scene, but it was the only piece of HO that I could get to. So I grabbed that. I've got this short little, I don't know what it is actually. It's looks like it's like 13 inches by 2 feet. The contest is supposed to be 2 foot by 4 foot. I just don't have the space. I've got some other little structures here that what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to leave those structures out. I think I'm going to make this is basically a little diorama that I could take and take down somewhere and like take pictures of different trains and stuff like that. So I've been working on this layout a little bit, trying to sort of figure out what I am doing. And I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but this is kind of my Walthers project that's due in, 4 days? 6 days. It's due on, I believe, May 30th. You have to have all your pictures and stuff turned in. So I am still working away at that.
Question.
So Cliff, I'm going to move you up there. I'm going to move me up there so we're sort of near each other. So I met Cliff. I'm doing some video recording for the National NMRA convention, and I got to meet Cliff through that. And Cliff's not really here on YouTube much, but I thought the topics that he did his clinics on was really interesting. So I thought we'd bring him on here, get to know a little bit about who he is, what he's up to, and how he kind of got into modeling and stuff. So Cliff, I don't know if you want to just start off with who you are a little bit. When and how did you get into model railroading, and like what scale do you model in?
Okay, so my name's Cliff Linton. I live in Alameda, California. It's a lovely island community off the coast of Oakland, in the Bay Area. Yeah. I have been fascinated by trains my entire life, and I think my first foray into the model world was with the Tyco HO scale model railroad, probably in 1968, just begging the heck out of my parents to get that for me. Was with HO for a long time. I grew up in the Chicago area. And then the folks moved to the suburbs of DC. When I was living in the suburbs of Chicago, the Chicago Northwestern went through the hometown. It was a commuter town, and my dad took the train to and from work every day. And it was really cool to see the double-decker commuter trains go through town. And we lived, you couldn't see them from the house, but you could definitely hear them from our house.
So you grew up with commuter trains.
I grew up with commuter trains.
But yet that's not what we're here to talk about.
No, it's not what we're here to talk about. And my current modeling interest is Chicago oriented, but there's practically no commuter train traffic on it because I'm interested in the B&OCT. So I'm doing that in N scale in the California equivalent of a basement, which is otherwise known as a garage.
Yep.
So we don't, the cars are all stored outside, but
Nice.
I have no snow to shovel or anything like that.
That's true. That's true.
For my career, I have been a business and commodities reporter and covered petroleum for the bulk of my career, following petroleum prices. And that's what led me into what were, these clinics. I've read, I worked on the floors of the Chicago Board of Trade and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I'm familiar with agricultural, livestock, currencies, butter, random length lumber. These are all commodities that they trade on the floors. And ironically enough, I think the contract spec for the random length lumber contract at one point was a boxcar full of lumber. So
explain just, I kind of understand the whole commodities thing. Like when I think of commodities, I think of trading places where they were talking about the orange futures and like all that kind of stuff. Like that's what I think of. Like, can you just explain to people a little bit, like what is commodities and what it is as a journalist that you're kind of tracking and reporting on?
Well, hold on. All right. Like how much time do we have?
Whatever. I don't know if I'm not sure if Tom is on tonight or not. I sent Tom an email. We may have till 8 o'clock. We may have longer. So we'll see.
So the basics of commodities are this.
The short version. We're model railroaders here. We don't need the.
I mean, the basics of commodities are these are all the things that we use in our daily life. And I mean, like I was talking about, we've got livestock futures, which eventually go to the meat that comes to our tables, grain futures that are processed in a variety of different things, bread, feedstocks or cattle feed. It goes into ethanol. We've got petroleum. We've got orange. There are oranges,
Paper.
not orange juice. Coffee, sugar, cocoa, platinum, palladium, gold, silver, metals, currencies, interest rate futures, stock index futures.
So instead of betting is probably the wrong word, but instead of
they don't like it at the exchange.
I know.
That's often how it's referred to.
Okay, I'll use a different word. Instead of gambling,
same thing.
Yeah. Instead of putting your money into a company, you're putting your money into a commodity. So the commodity may track multiple companies.
So,
right? So you're kind of.
So let's go back to, the example of trading places, which actually represented it in some ways very well. And basically what it is you're not investing in a company. You're not even investing in a commodity per se. You're either buying the commodity. If you're speculating, you're hoping that if you're buying it, that the price is going to go up, and then you're going to sell out in the future and collect a premium. or you're going to sell it and hope that the price is going to go down in the future, and you're going to sell that out. And I mean, the history of commodities goes back to early times in Japan. They had rice futures, they had tulip futures in Holland. My job over the bulk of my career has been following what's going on in the markets. You know, did things go up today? Did they go down today? Did they stay the same? What's the news? You know, what about the guys who were throwing the softballs across the Chicago River in the back of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, or the fat guys taking the, I mean, they had a fat guys race down Monroe Street in Chicago. So,
so commodities were all traded in Chicago, whereas stocks and everything are traded in New York, right?
yeah, except New York. New York had its own commodities markets as well.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Petroleum, precious metals, coffee, sugar, cocoa. Those were New York commodities, but they had the big stuff in Chicago too. And
so you became kind of this petroleum journalist, where I'm assuming at some point you weren't just tracking the prices, but you started tracking all the companies. You started then tracking how they all got transported, I guess, as well. And I know you've made these maps of all the network of sort of the different. Well, and I guess we should say too. Jason and I were talking a little bit earlier, and he was saying, like, what petroleum products are you talking about? Is it just all petroleum, or is there specific petroleum products that you're? And we can stick more with what you're getting into modeling right now as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's, you know, the rail was the first, was one of the first transport modes used to carry petroleum products in bulk, whether it was crude oil, gasoline, actually not gasoline, but crude oil and kerosene. Because when they first found oil in Pennsylvania, I mean, the interest was in kerosene, which was being used as a light or a heat fuel. And as you went through the refining process, crude oil is basically, you kind of get a stew. There's like this, it has all kinds of different stuff in it. So it's got diesel, jet fuel, normal butane, propane. It's got asphalt. It's got heavy oils that are used to for stationary boilers or for power plants at one point, and ships. So all of that has to be separated out, and you do that at the refinery. And over time, as the refineries grew, they started to figure out how to pull out all of these special products. And some of them had value to the refiners, and some of them didn't. So as a matter of fact, you know, kerosene, like I said, was one of the first. Jet fuel was something that we didn't really have a need for probably until the 1950s. Nobody knew what were we going to do with that. Jet fuel is kind of AKA kerosene.
So what aspect of it are you modeling then? Are you modeling the industries? Are you modeling the path between them? Like what aspect of it are you particularly interested in and kind of adding to your model? And if you have any pictures or something you want to show, I believe if you just screen share them, I'll be able to pop those up.
Oh,
as well,
okay. I'll have to figure that. You'll have to give me.
Or maybe I can try screen sharing some of the ones you sent me too.
So what's absolutely fascinating about this to me is the logistics involved, because as much as there's a lot of, the sexy part of this is all of what's making the markets go up and down and where the prices and everything like that. But the logistics of moving petroleum from, say, Saudi Arabia, we've got crude oil that's leaving Saudi Arabia and it's got to go somewhere else in the world. Well, how much does it cost to lease a tanker to do that? How much does it cost to load that tanker? How much is the cost per day of the tanker? And when the tanker, how long does it take the tanker to get from point A to point B? And then all the steps at the other end of the thing. And that's followed pretty actively. Fewer people had been doing that on the rail side. and I had an interest in that, and that's what I've been doing. I have actually been following. If for anybody who is interested, you want to lease a tank car, I can connect you with people that have them. So
That's too funny. So this is a model that you made that you sent me a picture of, and you've got a couple pictures of these different sort of models that you did.
So this is a model of the model railroad, and a friend of mine helped me build it, and we basically took Third Planet, where we had designed. I got a friend of mine actually, and he's now in Kitchener, Ontario, and he helped me with the track plan. We're still working on it, and this shows 2 out of the 3 levels that the layout will eventually have. The bottom level is staging yard, and I think I sent you some pictures of the staging yard. Now that shows all 3 levels.
Yeah, that's all 3.
And the things with the red X's are where the windows are in my California basement. So I was interested in that, and there was quite a bit of so here is the lowest level. This is called bar yard staging for the layout, and this is the B&O CT's only surviving yard of significance on the south side of Chicago, but it's all staging. This will be holding, in addition to B&O road freights, it'll be holding a variety of interchange runs, some passenger trains. This photo shows the entrance throat into the staging, and one of the things that I was concerned about is you see where that little the silver light reflector is. That's down where that staging is going to be located, 20 inches off the floor. So I didn't want to put too much stuff underneath the layout. So everything is surface mounted, whether it's servos, and you can see a couple of those in that photo. There's a couple of other photos that I sent you. That blue thing with the white stripe on it near the back, that's the routing panel. So you just push the button.
Is this modular too? It looks like I see some clamps kind of holding these pieces together.
Yeah, that was an idea that I'm not going to follow up on. Everything's clamped together with the track across the split, and that track is going to stay there. Okay. So there's the routing, and all the LEDs will indicate which route you've selected. I did all the electronics. That's the exit, and that also shows the 2 track switches that I still need to put into it in the wiring bridge. And there's my Zephyr, which is being used to test that will be used to test all the trains. So the next thing, once I get all this done, is run each train frontwards, backwards, and then backwards and then frontwards along each loop. And I'll probably be sitting there with a spreadsheet, just marking each circle of the train on this. And then once that's all completed, off on the left side of this photo, I'm going to tear up that track and build a helix to get up to the level above, which is what this is currently resting on.
Are you going to be? Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was going to ask, is this HO scale or N scale?
N scale.
N scale. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to be a Digitrax person once you wire up the whole thing, or are you just using the Zephyr for testing?
I'm at the cusp of a decision point here.
Yeah.
This is NCE territory out here. So I have I'm open to suggestion from people.
Well, if you ask 5 people their opinions, you'll get probably 20 different answers. So we probably don't have enough time to get all those answers tonight, but I'm sure everybody will happily give you their opinions on which
you
DCC
said Bay
system.
Area, right?
Yeah, it's
San
in the Bay
Francisco
Area.
SBHRS, I believe, is Digitrax, and honestly, that's the only N-scale layout of any sort that's large that I know about around here.
Yeah. So
How
Well,
big
yeah.
is this whole layout?
I'm sorry. What?
How big is the whole layout? It's
The
like if
space
we
is
look
roughly
at this, like how big is that space?
the garage is about 20 by 20, and this will occupy about 75% of the garage.
Is
So
this a finished garage or is this in your kitchen right now?
the model is sitting in the kitchen actually.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, that doesn't look like a garage.
No.
How did you choose what pieces and parts to model to sort of, get the operations? I'm assuming you're building this for operations.
Yes.
How did you decide what to include and what not to include?
I would say that I pretty much backed into every decision that I made. There were eventually some decisions that I made over time that I had consciously thought about. One of the first locomotives that I got in N scale was a Kato GP35. The one from the early 90s that was really a great runner and had good prototype fidelity. And I was running around the south side with some friends of mine shooting trains at the busy crossings, and I got interested in it, but I didn't know what to do about it. And I put together a module, and it was going to be an industrial area. And with a little bit of research, I started to realize that that kind of represented a part of the B&O CT. And I was like, well, okay, how do I make this work? And I had a layout that had reached a level of completion, but it had a lot of, there were inherent problems in it that I could not resolve through a little tweak here, a little tweak there. So I had to tear it down. And at that point, I said, I really want to go into the B&O CT. I found another person, it's kind of like bad pennies in a penny jar. It's like I found that person, and it's Henry Freeman out in South Carolina, and he models the B&O CT at the transition era. And I'm first generation, second generation diesel guy. And we got talking about it, and he steered me a lot. And I said, I want this yard. I want this. For me, it's interlocking towers and transfer runs. That's what I really like. And that's a real niche. I mean, there
So
are
what's an
not
interlocking tower and a transfer run in relation to the petroleum stuff?
no connection whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
No connection whatsoever. But I mean, in terms of
So are you
petroleum,
modeling petroleum then on your personal layout, or is it just something that you're interested in because of your job, but what you're modeling is going to be different than that?
correct.
Ah,
the job
gotcha.
the job has driven a lot of it, and I'm disappointed because the area that I'm modeling will preclude my ability to include some of the great like I can't do the Amoco Whiting refinery. That's just off my layout. I won't be able to do the Clark Oil refinery in Blue Island or ExxonMobil Joliet. Petroleum will come through, so I can have some cars, but it's not going to be the major focus of the layout.
I was gonna say you did send me some tank cars.
I did.
Are you gonna run tank cars on your layout as part of your operations?
Darn tootin'. Yep.
So I gotta ask this question: how
Yeah.
dangerous is transporting petroleum by rail?
Well, in N scale, since it won't actually have LPG in it, it's not too bad. However, in the real, it is probably one of the most hazardous products that the prototype railroads are dealing with on an everyday basis. It's it's very, very difficult for them to they charge a premium rate to move some of this stuff. And if they could, they'd want to get out of the business because of the hazard. You know, you get an ethanol train to blow up in your neighborhood, it can make national news or international news. And they don't like that kind of publicity, but they have common carrier status, which means that they have to do it. So that's
So railroads are required to transport it. They don't really have a choice. I didn't realize that. Is it safer than traveling by like over road?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say it is. I mean, the thing about it is, think of it this way: you get a gasoline tanker truck that has, and we had one in the Bay Area. This was probably within the last 10 years. Gasoline tanker truck turns over, catches fire, and literally melts the deck above it because it did it under a bridge going over it.
Of course it did, yeah.
Melted the whole thing. All right, so that was a pretty expensive fix, but that's only 10,000 gallons perhaps of gasoline. If a rail car the one you just showed is a 30,000 gallon LPG car, 3 times as much volume. And remember, you could probably have 10 of those coupled together. So what is that? 300,000 gallons of LPG. It's under pressure. It is, you've got all kinds of different concerns with that since it is under pressure. If it just vents, is it a product that holds to the ground, or does it rise up, or does it rise as it vents? Because it could search for an ignition. It's extremely hazardous. I'm getting some feedback here.
Yeah, I'm muting everybody. I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Hold on.
I think it stopped now because I muted everybody.
Okay. So I took total advantage of my current position to go tour some of these facilities, and I got a chance to visit the Aux Sable. It's a plant in the suburbs of Chicago, and they did an interesting thing there. And in that plant, they were served by the old Elgin, Joliet and Eastern Railroad, which was acquired by the Canadian National. And after the Canadian National acquisition, they didn't want to have a whole bunch of those old EJ&E guys and women working there. So Aux Sable hired them all. And the advantage was these people really knew how to run a railroad, because the plant railroad has a yard with a capacity of maybe at 120 to 160 rail cars. They have a loading rack that can serve 20 cars at a time. And they just said, this is what we want you to do. And they're like, no problem. And they run the railroad. And then when they're ready to, they load and unload the cars, they stage them, they set them up. And when everything is ready to go, they shove it out onto the interchange track, and the Canadian National picks it up. And Canadian National doesn't even come on the property, or the CSX, who also serves that plant too.
So the plant has their own sort of miniature railroad company with their own switchers, their own everything, and they get it all set up for the over the road.
Trains. Give me a second. I have some photos of that, and I will show them to you.
Okay. Drew Model Trains was saying there was a tanker years ago earlier that started the Oakland Hills, California fire. Dang thing blew up in the Haldecott Tunnel.
Oh yeah, that was an over the road thing. Yeah.
Oh, he's talking about over the road. Yeah.
Let's see, 2017. Come on.
Nisi says,
wasn't there like a derail like last week in Iowa that involved a tanker of some type with some type of hazardous petroleum byproduct?
Well, now you got to go look it up, Jason.
Yeah, I haven't been keeping up with that.
I'll see if I can find it.
Okay. So, all right, Heath, walk me through this here.
There's a share kind of in the middle of the bottom bar.
Okay, hold on. All right. Oh, I got it here. Let's see. What can we do? Open system private did not know.
Oh,
Grant
you probably
access.
have to allow it, which might mean you have to.
Yeah, hold on a
You're
second.
on a Mac, so it's probably going to ask you to.
I'm on one of them things.
Yeah. You may have to jump out and come back in, or you
Oh
can
yeah, here we
email
go.
it to me
Let's
or
see.
something. I'll give it a try.
Yeah, let's see if it'll allow this.
Who regulates all the petroleum part of the transportation? Is it the FRA, or is there extra governing bodies because of how hazardous it is?
All right, look, I'm not gonna be able to do this. Let me email you these photos here.
Okay.
And so there's a little bit of PHMSA, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, and then there is the Federal Railroad Administration. But and yeah, I mean, those are the two regulatory agencies, and the railroads have a self-interest in this as well. So give me 1 second here.
Hey Heath, I found the link for the Iowa, or it's not a link, but I'm looking at it on my phone.
Yeah.
It was carrying, where was it at? Hydrochloric acid, potassium hydroxide, and asphalt.
Okay.
So there you go. And that happened around 2 p.m. This past, on Sunday, May the 16th, around 2 p.m.
Is
Not bad.
asphalt considered? Asphalt's not petroleum based, is it?
It is.
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the tar in it.
Yeah, that's
Is
what I
what
thought. It
makes
might
it.
be petroleum. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the bottom stuff that comes out of the refining process.
Oh.
Isn't
So-
isn't the asphalt normally carried in covered hoppers?
In a real sense?
Yeah. Because I know
No.
another commodity that comes off of petroleum is paraffin wax, which
Yes.
is also at the bottom, and that is carried in covered hoppers.
Yeah, usually asphalt usually gets carried in tank cars, and they're insulated and jacketed tank cars. Because what you can do is when you heat up the asphalt, it'll flow. So
Okay.
you can pump it into the car. The car stays heated because it's insulated. And then when you're ready to unload it, you just make sure that it's warmed up enough and then pump it right out. They do
Interesting.
that with. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's interesting because you would think heating up something that's pressurized in a tank wouldn't be a good idea.
Well, in this particular instance, the asphalt is not pressurized.
Oh, okay.
It's also not really explosive.
Yeah.
It's very hard to actually get that stuff to burn. It's similar to what goes into some of the really big ships as well. It's like the bottom of the barrel
Yeah.
stuff.
Ron Bright says if they let the car cool down, it takes forever to unload.
Yeah.
Another name for that is bitumen, or if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah. Bitumen. Yeah. That's
Yeah, it's like a
unprocessed.
raw product with nothing else in it.
Yeah. So let's
If
see.
my research was correct.
I used to work for a company that transported bitumen, LPG, and petrol. And we used to, out in the outback, we often had a road train of at least 4 B doubles, which would be, sort of about 15,000 litres each tank. And one of my roles was we had to have a server because every one of the trucks was tracked via mobile phone in each truck, and have it broken. It's a bit like a float box in a plane. So every truck had to have that by law.
Somebody's asking what is pitch. I don't know the answer. And Greg, you're still really
Tar.
loud for some reason. I'm not sure why you're so loud.
Hey, Heath. Pitch is just tar. It's
Okay,
just another name for it.
there you go.
It's the antique term.
Yeah.
That's much better, Greg.
You should have a couple of emails from me, or an email from me, Heath, with
Yeah, I just got one. Let me find that.
three photos.
I think this was the first one.
So,
Cliff, while Heath is looking those up, what area? I guess I didn't catch it, but what area are you modeling exactly? And I might have stepped out when you said that.
oh, sure. Well, so my model interests does not completely overlap with with the clinic interest. My model interest is the Baltimore and Ohio Chicago terminal in inner city Chicago. This particular plant that you're looking at here, this is the Aux Sable plant, which is out by Joliet. I will have tank cars rolling through my layout, which is going to have an era of the late 60s, early 70s. But the stuff that I'm familiar with, which is much more 21st century type of stuff, hasn't even happened in my fake world.
I got you. Now, with this picture here, you said this is Joliet. If I'm not mistaken, the BNSF, they run crude oil trains. I want to say 3 a day, both directions,
Yeah,
north
the
and south, of where I
contract.
live at. And I want to say they come from around the Galveston area.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if that's, the same refinery that those tank trains are, the tank unit trains, or we call them crude oil trains because that's literally all it's carrying, if that's where it's being delivered to.
Yeah, I mean, so so we talked about commodities, and commodities are, shall we say, generic type of products. But in the petroleum world, the raw material is anything but uniform. All right. No matter where the crude oil that you take out of West Texas may be a little different than the crude oil that you take out of East Texas versus the crude oil you take out of the Bakken Shale up in North Dakota and the crude oil you take out of Saudi Arabia. And when somebody builds a refinery, they build it because they have a supply of crude oil that they're looking to tap. And the refineries, so if the BNSF is bringing crude oil into the refineries in the Chicago area, I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly what ExxonMobil has, but I know Amoco in Whiting, Indiana, they went to what's called a heavy crude slate, and they were tapping a lot of Canadian crude. BNSF may be delivering Bakken crude to an interchanging railroad in Chicago, and that could be going to East Coast refiners. I don't know.
Is
if
there
anybody...
a way to find out the different tank car routes? Like if somebody wanted to model, like let's say Jason wanted to figure out where those tank cars are coming for because he wanted to model that. Is there a way to like determine the different routes for the different tank cars?
Give me a call.
Okay.
I'm not.
People might.
I am not trying to be. I'm not
Good.
trying to be too snarky about this, but you know, in the post 9/11 world, the
That's what I was going to.
dissemination of that kind of information
Oh.
is harder and harder to find, but it's possible to find it. If you know where your refinery is and you know what the carrier is, I mean, it's not hard to figure out. And a lot of this has
Right.
been discussed. But I truly, if I would be more than willing to help you, and if you wanted to collaborate, we could probably do a little project, which would we could bring back to a forum like this and kind of discuss what was involved in researching all of this, so you could figure this all out, and anybody could figure out the process. But
So
I would
And if I'm,
be happy to
you
help.
know, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of refineries have oil piped in or trucked in, and then it's usually carried out by rail. A lot of them aren't carried in by rail. Usually refineries will get a lot of empties and then have, at least several of the ones I know do. I'm not sure if that's the case all the time.
It depends on the area.
Yeah, and the market conditions, because the refiners in the Delaware River in the Philadelphia area, they had taken the North Dakota crude for quite a long time and built loop tracks and everything to be able to unload a crude oil train in 24 hours.
Okay.
Then Bakken crude got expensive, so they went back to supplying the crude oil via tanker from the east coast of, the west coast of Africa. I would say, yeah, I mean, it depends. If you're bringing in crude by rail, some people have options to go to.
So what are we looking at here in this picture? This is a loading thing.
This is a loading rack. This is at the Oxable Oxable natural gas liquids fractionation plant. There is a massive natural gas pipeline coming down from Western Canada that ends in Chicago, and this pipeline carries natural gas that has been unprocessed in it. So it arrives down here in a town called Morris, Illinois, outside of Joliet, and it at one point was the largest natural gas processing plant in the world. And what it does is it splits off all the stuff that you can't ship to your retail customer or even your industrial customer who wants to run a power plant or heat water or turn on your stove. And that stuff goes down the natural gas pipe, but you get all this stuff like propane and ethane and butane, which I talk about in one of the clinics, and natural gasoline. The ethane, coincidentally, in this case, there's a vacant lot between Oxable and the Equistar ethylene plant, which makes plastics. It makes the first building block for plastic resins. So the other end of that would be either a pipeline carrying ethylene, or it goes yet another step to create polyethylene, which is loaded into covered hopper cars that then is shipped off to some plastics manufacturer somewhere. At this rack, they're loading propane or butane that's going to go off to, in some cases, they're, interestingly enough, supplying propane to Mexico via ferry boat, of all things.
Benghazi Junction, Carl Broad's asking if every state has a refinery.
Pretty close. There's 141 refineries in the U.S.
There's a couple of states that have outlawed petroleum products because they're eco maniacs.
Yeah, but I mean, Hawaii. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, if there's 141 refineries, like Nisi's saying, there's no oil refineries in Florida. Does it? If there's no refinery there, do they just pump it in, or do they maybe have a different process? Or
Um, comes in by barge, comes in by truck,
okay,
maybe comes in by vessel, maybe depending if the economics work, you could rail it in.
I believe Florida gets a lot of their gas from barges. That's why they didn't have. That's why they weren't affected by the pipeline issue.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, Florida, stop taking all this gas. You don't need it.
here's another one of the pictures you just sent me. Well,
Yeah. Those are two of the processing units at that plant. That's the they're taking ethane out of the natural gas stream.
are there different tank cars for different, like butane versus ethanol versus whatever? Like, are the tank cars different, or are they all kind of the same tank cars?
They are different, and
Is there a way to identify them? Like, if I wanted to model like XYZ or whatever, how do I know what tank cars to get for my layout based on, what I want to model?
so you have to know what is the so in this photo, this is the yard at Aux Sable, and everything that they handle there is liquefied petroleum gas. So to get it to be a liquid, it has to be pressurized. So it needs to go into a stronger tank car, and these are more heavy duty rail cars than a general service car, which handles product that remains a liquid at atmospheric pressure and ambient temperatures. Propane, butane, for instance, boils off at 34 degrees Fahrenheit, and isobutane boils off at 11 degrees Fahrenheit. But it's much easier to move these things as liquids. I think I sent you some pictures of some HO scale tank cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's grab some of those, and I'll point out some of the differences between the tank cars.
Okay, let me bring up.
Well, and not just that, but you can always look at the chemical placard, and look at the UN number or the American DOT number to see exactly what chemical is being carried in that tank car on the prototypes.
Absolutely. That's a good point. And the ones we were just looking at, I don't know if you noticed, but they had 1075. And 1075 is the number for LPG.
I don't have that one open anymore. But
not to worry. We'll get back to it.
Okay.
So pressure tank cars, typical volume size of them is about 30,000 gallons. And you'll notice on that particular tank car, the roof walks are particularly are prominent. And there's usually larger manways. I'm not exactly sure why this happens to be a particular feature of these cars, but it is kind of unique to the fact of this car. It carries a car designation class of a DOT 112. So that tells you, so it is a car specifically designed to maintain higher pressures.
Where do you see the DOT number on it? Is it one of these like little numbers?
It'd probably be in the lower right corner. I'm not sure the stencil is there. In this, give me a second.
Oh, is it the little sort of triangle hazard placard down here?
Well, that should say 1075 in it, but right above it should be the stencil, which shows you the last time that the tank was actually tested, the elements that were tested, and when the test has to be performed again. All right. So as you see, yep, zoom in a little bit more. There we go.
Here's one right here too.
Almost
Mine's
there
got
you
a DOT number.
Oh, and
So you
Shane's
can-
got one too. But yeah.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is ammonia. But
DOT something J349W maybe.
It's DOT 112J 340W.
There you go.
that's what mine says.
There we go. So you got a pressure car.
Yep. This one's
So-
ammonia, though.
That's ammonia? Okay, absolutely. So probably has a slightly higher pressure rating. Okay, so that, Heath, is a picture of an ethanol tank car. And it definitely has an easy to read stencil on the right side of it. That's two pressure cars.
Right,
One's the Atlas whale belly and the other one is that Walthers pressure car. Okay. So that's a DOT 111. And it's got bottom unloading valves on it. And that,
Yeah, you can see
that little spreadsheet thing.
111A something.
Yep. It's the 111A, and that little spreadsheet thing shows on it what had to be tested when it was tested, and the results when it has to be tested again.
There's no roof walks on that. Is that because of the year it's made, or is that because of the material inside of it?
So this is a different car class, and so that it wasn't as prominent to have the roof walks on it. I would just say that the prominent roof walks were kind of signature to the 112s.
I think that the roof walks on the 112s are there because during the loading and unloading process, as they're moving a few more cars up, the people can literally just walk to the next tank car on top without having to jump off, walk all the way down the rack, and then climb back up.
Yeah.
Drew Dude's asking DOT is Department of Transportation.
Correct.
That's
yes.
correct. Yeah. Yeah, we do have some people here who are not from the U.S., so some of those abbreviations might not. This is Walthers, I believe. Is that true?
Yes, that is a Walthers.
Yeah,
car.
Walthers ethanol tank car, 25,500 gallons.
Yeah.
Is there a weight limit? So I know like tank cars are sized by their volume.
Right.
But then is there like, depending on where they're traveling, can they only be loaded to a certain point?
You may run into circumstances, especially, let's take a propane car, for instance. All right. Some more rural propane distributors may be on short lines. So they may only be able to accommodate a 263 thousand pound car versus a 286,000 pound car. So you may have to underload the car to be able to serve the customer. And that's one of those things that the schedulers have to be particularly aware of, because you don't want to send a car that has a higher weight capacity with a full load onto a receiving railroad that can't handle it.
So there's, I guess, a different pressurizing process to, if the car is full, I'm guessing it's easier to pressurize it to keep it liquid than if it's like half empty then. So are there different cars for that? Or are they the same cars? Is it?
Same car, you just have to you have to maintain the pressure bubble above your liquid.
I've got a question about that. In some industries, when you have like a half full tank, especially of a volatile material, something flammable or explosive, they would take and they would put an inert gas in to fill the empty space so that air's not in there for it to combust with. Do they do that in the rail industry also?
I will say I'm not quite sure. I do not know what they. I don't know. I'll just say that.
Okay.
Yeah, Lehigh River Surgeon is saying like nitrogen. Yeah, I remember with welding gas and acetylene and all that kind of stuff. There was that whole thing of it would be filled with like balsa wood or something, so there was only a little bit of space where it could be gas at the top. So there could only be a certain amount of pressure from the gas.
I can give you a really good example because I used to be a welder. Something we would do whenever we would cut apart like propane tanks for people to use to make lawn ornaments or whatever they want out of them. We would take and we would hook up some kind of gas. Like a lot of times you can use the exhaust fumes out from a car, and you just route them into the tank so it pushes all the air out, fills it with inert gas that's non-flammable. You can cut on it, you can weld on it, you can do whatever, you can put a flame to it, and nothing will happen.
Tim from CP368 Productions is saying they do have lower weight capacity cars for those circumstances. Drew Dude Model Train says they have added inert gas in jetliners. Chris from Go Via Go Home. Normally it's 30,000 gallon tank cars and 6,351 cubic foot covered hoppers that support the ethanol plants. So what in the ethanol plant would be in a covered hopper?
You get two products. One's an inbound product and one's an outbound product.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
You get the inbound product is grain coming in. Some plants receive grain in unit train quantities. And that comes in usually a medium cube covered hopper, the 3 bays that you're pretty familiar with. Those have a capacity of roughly 4,000 to 5,500 cubic feet. And then on the outbound side, you have what are called distillers dried grains with solubles in them. And that's 5,500 cubic feet or above. And that's a 4-bay covered hopper, usually 68.5 to 69 feet long. And that all goes to livestock feed primarily. And that can move in unit train quantities as well.
So when you say unit train quantities, how many cars is that usually?
Let's think for most circumstances, 100 cars. On the railroads, they'll kind of juggle it here and there, but you can usually think of a unit train as 100.
So these two cars that we've got up on the screen here, the one on the right is that LPG car we were looking at earlier, but the one on the left's very different with all the different ladders and the roof walk and
that's also an LPG car, liquefied petroleum gas. It's of a much earlier vintage. That's an Atlas model, more from the 1960s. You showed a picture of a black LPG car that looked very similar to that. This is HO scale. The other one was N scale. This has the whale belly kind of configuration to it, where it kind of droops down a little bit in the stomach of it. It's just an older design for the car.
I see, how it's dropping down here.
Yeah.
So the tank cars have changed over time. Like if people, you mentioned, petroleum by rail in the 21st century. Has technology changed a lot in the transporting of petroleum-based products over the last 60 years?
Yeah. If you, leading into the 1950s, liquid petroleum was largely moving in riveted tank cars. Okay, so they would take sheets of steel and you'd seal them together with rivets. And in the late part of the 50s and into the 60s was the development of the all-welded tank car, which led to the DOT 111A tank car model. And the tank became an integral part of the car frame. So you no longer had those, you had ladders to get up to the manways at the top of the car, but the way you would sort of move around the car is there was actually kind of a walkway, and there were railings that you'd have to hold on to that you could kind of skirt around the car back in the day.
People were talking about in chat, what were the safety precautions that they do back in the steam era? And the response was that there just were none.
Yeah.
The idea of safety is kind of a modern a modern thing. But I was kind of wondering with safety. People know a little bit about buffer cars. If there's 100-car unit train of LPG gas, is there only like one buffer car in that?
As the train freak says, yes.
So if something happens 50 cars back, that whole train is just going to go up. There are no other buffers. Like, it's not.
So the way the buffer cars work, let's say that you have a tank train. You've got, 2 locomotives up front. You got a locomotive on the rear. You've got a buffer car between the front locomotives and that first tanker. You also have a buffer car between the last tanker and that last locomotive. But when you think about the explosion happening, where would it happen? It's going to happen behind the lead locomotive. So your crew is really not in that much harm's way because the explosion is behind them. So, and you got to also think that extra locomotive also acts as an extra buffer.
Right.
One of the things that has, this is safety by experience. I don't know how many people remember the Mississauga, Ontario derailment, explosion, and everything. That involved some pressure LPG cars, some chlorine tank cars. They had to evacuate the entire city. This is a suburb of Toronto. But out of that came the development of the shelf coupler. So normal couplers are kind of like this, but a shelf coupler has ears at each end, and that helped to keep the cars together because one of the vulnerable spots was the end of the tank, which is where you'd get punctures. And that's where a lot of your product would leak out and potentially cause conditions for an explosion or fire.
Yeah, I know Jason's mentioned this whole shelf coupler thing, and I never understood that. Is shelf couplers just for tank cars, or are they used on other things as well?
Yes and no. You got a type E and a type F. So a lot of your cars today are going to.
I knew when I asked that question it was a mistake because he was going to type E, type F. I don't know what he's talking about anymore. Go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
I can't help it that I got a friend who used to be a DOT federal
we all
DOT
know about your
inspector,
friend.
so,
we all know.
Man, I've learned so much of this. All right, so Cliff, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If it's on E or F, most of the cars today will have just the disc coupler here, where you've got the one on the bottom, and it's just like a standard coupler like that.
Okay.
And I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's the E.
Okay.
The F is where it's up. You got both up and down. And what happens is when a car derails and it slows down, the next car, as it pushes up, that extra on the top and the bottom prevents the couplers from popping out. And so a lot of your cars today that are not your tank cars will only have that bottom section.
Yeah, Anthony Dodge says that Jason knows a guy.
See, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy,
David Atkins up in Canada says that some auto racks have shelf couplers.
I've seen box cars. I've seen covered hoppers. I mean, you name it. Literally, the railroad has gone to every car must have that shelf coupler with the bottom extension. Not necessarily the top, but the bottom extension. It's the tank cars that are mandated to have that top extension.
Chris from Gofia Go Home says you won't see flat cars next to tank cars. This is where bulkhead flats come in.
That's true too.
Interesting. Most modern cars now have the shelf couplers, according to Tim.
Yes.
CP368 production.
And it's the difference
if you're doing
between
a modern era, you should be putting shelf couplers on. If you're doing the era when nobody cared about safety, then you could use whatever you want.
That's correct. And, and Cliff can back me up on this too. They've even gone more into like the modern days of tank car safety than the shelf couplers. You see some with steel plates on the end. And just recently when I was down at Flying Crow's place, what was it? Not this past weekend, but the weekend before, I saw a train shoving some tank cars into a siding, and it literally looked like the tank car had an extension of the whole cylinder end on the end of it. So it was like if something was to pierce through it, it would have to pierce through 2 levels, you know. And those were brand new cars.
Yeah. So in terms of talking about tank car safety, this is the 111 and the 112 had gone for a long time without any particular significant development changes. But as we started to move a lot more petroleum by rail in this century, and this is largely an outgrowth of the Clean Air Act of the 1990s, which created demand for ethanol and also created much more of a demand for moving butane. And then we had crude by rail that came out of this whole shale revolution. Well, guess what? This also demonstrated, these cars don't jump off the tracks by themselves. And I kind of hate to throw spears and arrows at the railroads, but I mean, the honest truth was there was operational issues on the railroads that were responsible too. So, by the way, I sent you an email of a photo of a shelf coupler, Heath, if you see that and you want to pull it up.
Yeah, while I'm getting that, Mr. Pictovid, Andrew, who models G-scale, mostly G-scale, but he does have some N-scale stuff as well. He's wondering who makes shelf couplers.
Katie.
Oh, no.
Katie does for HO.
Good.
Because I have some.
What about what about the other scales?
I think Microtrains might make them for N-scale, but I'm not 100 on that one.
Yeah, I don't know that I except for you, Jason, I've never heard anybody mention shelf couplers.
Do I count?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, now Cliff, correct. Yes. So yeah, so it basically just looks like a much taller coupler to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, there's
like a much longer coupler.
Right.
I mean, you literally just added twice the length that coupler would have to pop over the other coupler in order to detach.
Right.
You know, compared to the old days, because used to, and it's like what Cliff was saying, is when the car derailed, the next car would pop upwards, coupler comes out, the coupler is what's puncturing the end of the tank car. Now you just added twice that required pop out, which with the amount of weight, it's a lot less likely to happen. It's not a guarantee, but it's a lot less likely.
So Cliff, from what you've seen, I mean, I'm assuming you've seen some people that have modeled petroleum-based layouts with a lot of tank cars and stuff. What is the biggest, I'm going to say the biggest mistake, right? I mean, it's their railroad, there are no mistakes, but from a prototypical point of view, what are some mistakes that people make when modeling petroleum-based layouts or even just sort of tank car consists? Or what are some things people should? I'll make it a little easier. What are some main things people should think about if they want to be as close to kind of prototypical as possible when modeling tank car type things?
Yeah, I think I'd rather answer that question than the first one because, I mean, honestly, part of this has to do with the fact that in a lot of cases, with the exception of one or two people here, I mean, we're talking about a commodity that's a little bit more on the obscure side.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is people are working from a lack of knowledge in a lot of cases, and I think when you decide that you're going to model the 21st century, you're modeling things a little bit differently than they would have been in the loose car switching era. Things move in larger quantities. Railroads and their customers are very sensitive to the amount of time it takes, say, to load or unload a car. It can take 8 hours to load a propane tank car or the same amount of time to unload it. Making sure that it's spotted correctly. Do you have the correct prototype car for what you're looking to model? The cars are starting to catch up, but nobody has the latest version of the car that is now being manufactured, the 117J, which is used for general service. Athearn, both in N scale and HO scale, put out a bunch of ethanol tank cars from the earlier part of this century. And they're pretty good. I mean, they're very good cars, but they wouldn't be the ones that anybody who's shipping ethanol would be buying today. In terms of the prototype industry, it's knowing what that looks like. Wow. I mean, I've got pictures of loading racks. You've seen that one in Oxable. That is a very complex structure to build. There's no kit available of that. And every loading rack is uniquely built to the customer that it serves. Refineries are custom built factories, and the kits that are out there will kind of get you started. But if you really want to faithfully reproduce it, you have a hell of a kit bashing or scratch building project in front of you. It's all interesting to me. There's a lot that I've learned. There's still so much more for me to learn. I've learned a lot actually just in this discussion today. And so somebody who wants to do this, feel free to share my contact information. I'd be happy to field questions from anybody and hopefully pass on resources. There is a lot out there on the web, though.
So we met through recording some of your clinics. You want to talk a little bit more about the clinics that you're giving upcoming, and just so people know, we're talking about the NMRA 2021 National Convention that's starting on June 6th. It's 5 days long. Cliff is one of the presenters that will be a part of it. And what's great about the clinic and the way they're doing it is it's a different format than what we did here. Cliff's actually going to do a presentation, and then afterwards they have breakout rooms where you can go and just hang out and ask Cliff more questions and get more information as well. But Cliff, you just want to talk a second about what
Sure.
you're doing for them? That'd be great.
So I'm doing 2 clinics. The first one is really straight petroleum. It's butane by rail. And butane is one of those natural gas liquids. And it's significant because it is used in the gasoline production process, but only on a seasonal basis. So I talk a lot about the logistics of it and why it has to move by rail versus why wouldn't it move by pipe, or why isn't it kept on tanks on the refinery storage? And then I explain, I show you what loading racks look like, what the refinery looks like, what some of the storage looks like, and some of the elements that you would want to include if you're going to try to model this. And the best part about butane by rail, believe it or not, is all you need is to get one of those pressure tank cars, and you could store that in some unused industry trackage, and you can model butane by rail because you're collecting storage fees from somebody who is filled that tank car in April and they don't need it until October. So
what you're saying is, if I buy a single tank car for $30 from, let's say, Microtrains, and I put it on my layout, I'm magically going to just get a check in the mail every month for storage fees from some random mysterious person.
You have to hold somebody's butane in there. So
okay.
There's a commercial transaction involved in it. But remember, this is the model world. It's a little fantasy. So that's one of the clinics, and that one goes back to my roots. I covered the natural gas liquids market, which is just this obscure market that has much more impact in our lives than I would have ever possibly imagined. And then the other one is about ethanol by rail. And the neat thing about ethanol is that you have two basic commodity types. You have agriculture, so you got corn, you got theoretically wheat or barley on this side. So you've got grain elevators, and you've got hopper cars, and you've got the whole farm industry, and you could just do ethanol just by covering that side. Then it goes to the plant. You can model the plant. Walthers did one of these in HO scale. They never did anything in N scale with it. If you could still find it, it's out of production. And then you've got the petroleum side, and that's moving out by tank car. You've got the distillers dried grains. You've got other products moving like carbon dioxide and natural gasoline. You've got stuff moving by truck. And I try to go through everything from the farm to the retail gasoline station, because, I mean, here in California, we put ethanol in our tank, in our cars. And so I have photos of everything with the exception of a combine working the farm.
David Atkins just said having all this knowledge makes the operations on a model railroad much more interesting, and I agree. That's particularly why I wanted to bring Cliff up here for this for Modeling Monday. I mean, we've mostly been building kits and stuff here as well, but I think at the end of the day, we're modeling these kits to put them on our railroad and use them. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Cliff, can I post your email address, the one we've been sharing, for people to reach out to you via, or is there another method you'd like people to contact you with?
That email address is a very good way.
Perfect. So I just posted that in the chat, and somebody had another question that I thought we'd take just before. We'll take this question, and then I want to check back in with everybody that's been working on projects up here and see where they have gotten on their projects. And now I can't find the question. The question, oh, here we go. Is liquefied nitrogen hauled by rail at all?
How's this for an answer? I think so.
Yeah, I don't know either. I guess anything, right? That anything that can be liquefied, I guess you can put in a tank car if you can get the hazmat certifications or whatever to transport it.
Would that be hauled in a cryo tank car?
Yes.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep. That is probably what are in those.
Somebody just made some of those in N scale recently.
The cryo cars? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Microtrains is coming out with them.
Yeah.
And I know some people.
There's lots of guys out on Facebook that have groups for their custom train companies, and they scratch build those same rail cars from. Like they'll buy like a model like this, and then they'll turn it into a cryo car.
N-Scale Coal is saying it's BLI that's making some.
Okay. Did
Yeah, and
Rapido
Mike
do
is saying
anything
that as
recently?
Say that again?
Did Rapido do anything recently? I'm not sure.
I know Rapido's doing a lot of passenger stuff, but I know Chris from Go Via Go Home is a Rapido expert, and I'm sure he will let us know in the chat if they are. But yeah, I don't know.
What about the like domeless tank cars? Like I've seen some carrying liquid argon.
Yeah. What? I know they want to do LNG by tank car, and those would be domeless. I think the classification of cars, off the top of my head, I think it's a DOT 113, and I think that's a domeless car.
Is that because you have to unload from the bottom?
Don't know. Not sure why that classification.
Well, if it's liquid, you can't easily unload out of the top unless you've got a siphon that goes to the bottom of the tank.
Yeah,
Shays N Scale Rapido is coming out with tank cars. They're available for pre-order now.
yeah.
But
So interestingly enough, the pressure cars, the butane and propane cars are top loaded and top unloaded. They don't unload. They don't use they're not gravity unloaded. And part of that has to do with the fact that you need to maintain pressure. So you don't just hook up a single hose. You've got another hose connected to it that is
kind of pushing.
kind of ejecting pressure. Yeah. And then
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I've got a picture of one of the argon refrigerated liquid tank cars that I was talking about.
You want to try and share your screen? Oh, it's on your thing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting.
Yeah, there's no fill on the
Very
top.
interesting. Yeah.
But it does look like it's got those two pipes at it that vent, I guess, that go up to the top. So I'm assuming that the load and the unload is there in that box in the bottom center.
Well, all these cars have pressure relief valves in them as well, so that if the cargo inside of them starts to expand, that these valves will pop off and prevent the car from exploding.
I'm assuming right there on the end.
That kind of looks like
Raise
it,
it up.
doesn't it?
I know it's kind of blurry, but
You know, Jason, if you had a
Okay, good.
computer there with you, you could look it up on the computer and bring it up on screen that way.
yeah, but see, I don't take my pictures with my computer. I take it with my phone.
Do you need any IT help? We can maybe hook you up with somebody that knows a little something about IT stuff.
I can. Hey, where's Rick Bailey at?
Oh, you can throw Rick under the bus, are you? Cliff, if you don't know, Jason's an IT guy, so that's why I'm giving him a hard time. But yeah, I do want to just take a minute. I have a new sponsor, PTF Designs, background building flats. Check them out. Code HUMAN for 10% off. Then we also still have Iron Planet Hobbies, HUMAN 10% off. They do a lot of DCC stuff, as well as we got CMR products. 15% off with the code HUMAN. Check out their desk organizers and also their decals. I do want to jump to, I noticed Greg's actually got his bus. Oh, of course, the second I switch the camera to it, it stops moving. And it looks like Greg's not there either, but looks like Greg got his bus going around in circles. And then I noticed, Adam, how's your project going as well? I see you've been...
Yeah, I got all the Anthorns streamlines done, working on the Walthers ones, but I was going to stay out of the IT comment, considering I'm a bachelor's in computer sciences with advanced networking and telecommunications.
We just like giving Jason a hard time, that's all.
I know.
He just makes it so easy. That's what's happening.
So does Heath when he causes all the problems.
Yep.
And Adam, you may need to show Jason how to apply some decals. He still thinks that you're supposed to lick and stick them. We're trying to convince him that's not the best way to apply decals. So,
Well, I got
anytime you want to post up a video of that.
Yeah, I got microset, microcell, and Solvaset here, so I'm gonna start learning how to use Solvaset.
Ah, there you go.
I heard that Rick Bailey lick and stuck that Rita decal last night.
And we're gonna move on from there. James from Boulder Creek Yard. We haven't said hello to you yet. Looks like you're putting some finishing touches on your NMRBO module. Of course, I switched to him. He's probably not even there. He probably fell asleep like 20 minutes ago. Oh man, if people notice Rick's comment in the chat, I'm not going to bring it up, and nobody needs to read it out loud, but we could all see it. Robert, how's your project going on over there? It looks like you're working on a little outhouse or something. Oh, you're on mute. Hold on. Now you're off mute.
Yes, this is my outhouse with a wide open door so people can see what you're doing. This is the head house for the silos. So I'm doing that. Got the pipe to go on top.
Oh, we're getting
Your
a
grain
little
elevator
feedback
looks
from you,
terrific.
Robert. Oh. We were getting
Say
some
again?
feedback. We were getting a little bit of feedback from you.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah, this is actually, these, believe it or not, these are actually the silos from the cement plant. They are the same ones that are in the grain elevator, just with a different top and bottom on them. So
I noticed, are those Walter's instructions you're actually following down there?
yes, believe it or not, these aren't as bad as, well, in some ways they're not good. They're not as detailed as I would like them to be, because sometimes you have to experiment. But in some places they're actually very good. So
Nice.
But there
When are
you
you
go.
gonna? Are you waiting until you have it all assembled to paint it, or are you gonna paint it in pieces?
I'm going to paint it in assembled pieces. So I will paint this distribution pipe and this head house separately from the silos. So there are parts I'm assembling first, and then that are all the same color. So anything that's all the same color will be assembled together.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out when to paint different things. So
Yeah, if they're the same color, it's best to assemble them first and then paint them.
So, Robert, you're modeling the ethanol by rail business right there.
Yeah. Well, by having I believe it or not, on my layout, I do have a refinery. I haven't built the buildings for that yet. So, and this of course being a cement plant, it's going to have asphalt as well. So I've got to have tank cars for that. So.
That's right. This is cement, not corn. Sorry, I have.
Yeah, I can't. I have a grain elevator, but it's just for feed grain and that kind of stuff. So I'm modeling the 70s. People didn't know what ethanol was.
Well, actually, they did.
They did, but they didn't use it at the gas pump, right?
No. I mean, we used it actually during World War II as a gasoline additive when a lot of gasoline was being supporting the war effort. So
yeah, basically, it's just grain alcohol, isn't it?
Same stuff, but it's got they throw some denaturant into it so that the revenuers don't
drink it. That's right.
Yeah.
No drinking the ethanol straight from the gas pump. Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
Not if you want to live.
Yeah. I think if James from Boulder Creek Yard comes back, I believe he's actually doing the Walters grain kit for the NMRBO, and I think that on the ground there is his little grain elevator. And he disappeared. Well, there you have it. But Greg, you were gone when I came and looked at you, but it looks like you got your bus going around in a circle.
Got me on mute. Yeah, I've got it on. I'm trying to I've got these pieces where you can actually this, and I can't find the pieces that don't have this. I was trying to make the bus run without the stop mechanism, which is some magnets, and it's actually on a slide. And I'm not sure why I can't get it going. It's just been one of those days. I've had a heat moment. I couldn't get my second camera working. Microphone's not working. Anyway. And I had a car accident on Saturday up the bum of my car on my way to my daughter's wedding. So, yeah.
Well, you know, Greg, if it's not something, it's something else, it seems. So, you know.
Heat moments.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Ian says, I miss gas without ethanol. And CP368 saying the ethanol at the pumps, it's only 10%. So the rest is just gasoline.
Well, here the 10% only on the unleaded. If you buy premium, there's no ethanol.
I thought ethanol was. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Tim's saying only 87 has ethanol around here.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that. Well, there you go. David Atkins is heading out, but he's saying, thanks, Cliff. Gotta go. It's supper time. So he is joining us. Yeah, so we're going to wrap up in about 10 minutes or so. Tom is going live tonight. At least according to him, he is. So we'll wrap that up. But Lynn or Shane or Jason, do you guys have anything you want to share or ask?
I have a question or two for Cliff.
Go for it.
I didn't really catch at the beginning. You did touch on it, but I didn't pick up on it exactly. What era are you modeling in?
I am modeling probably late 60s, early 70s. It's got to be pre-Amtrak. Hey, you know, I mean, we're talking Chicago here, so I got to have the B&O Capital Limited.
Ah, gotcha. Okay,
you know,
I'll give you that.
That was kind of a leading question because I'm over in the Mojave Desert.
Okay.
You're north, but you know where Bakersfield is.
Yeah.
And the tank trains come up over the Tehachapi. We see tank trains all the time. And they come into Mojave, where I went up to Ridgecrest and I was talking earlier about. Drive right through Mojave and the Mojave Yard, and there's all the tank cars and the storage. They have a new, relatively new, I think in the last 10 years, industry that just started right out by the Mojave Airport. But it's way out away from everything. And what they do is clean the tank cars internally and inspect them. And it's a whole business. Every time I go out there, it's expanding. Sounds like a really scary job that these guys have to put on some kind of spacesuit and climb down inside the tanks and clean out whatever they industrially can't get out. But on an HO level, it wouldn't take up that much space and would be kind of an interesting niche in the modeling industry. But I think a little newer than what you're modeling in.
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm modeling, yeah, I wouldn't have it. Interestingly enough, I mean, I don't see a lot of discussion about this or even representation of it, but it's car shops. And there's a lot of use of car shops. And in the 21st century, the tank car business would collapse if there were no shops, whether they're tied to somebody like Trinity or UTLX, Procar, or GATX, or somebody like that who's running their own shop network, or third-party shops. But if you change between commodities, and people are really reluctant to do that, the car has to be shopped. It has to be clean. If you have a lease, usually there's a requirement that the car be returned in a clean state. So one of those people that's in those Tyvek suits diving into those cars with a steam hose, with the bottom valve open and forced air going through, that's what they're doing. They're cleaning all that stuff out.
Yeah, scary job.
When you say car shops,
pardon?
So real quick, when you're talking about car shops, we're not talking about automobile car shops. You're talking about tank car shops?
Yes.
Rail car shops.
Rail car shops.
So
on our club module layout, our newest module, because we're always expanding. Everybody's coming up with something new. Got old stuff too. One of the guys is really into Metrolink, which is local for Amtrak, but it's private. Comes out here in the desert, down to Los Angeles, all the way to San Diego, up and down the coast a little bit. And his latest is a car shop with lights and everything. He's still working on it, some of the details, but for the show, showing the Metrolink cars going in and being serviced, cleaning, repairs, whatever on that. Something else I want to quickly touch on. You're talking about the shelf couplers. I discovered them, KD, a few years back, and almost all of my new cars, if I'm putting couplers on, I use them. Everybody throws a fit because they say, oh, they're too big, they're too bulky, they're not realistic. My trains don't come apart. I'm watching the other guys running around, and modules do have a tendency to do this, especially when they're wood. And you see the passenger cars come disconnected, the freight cars come disconnected. problem is you have a real hard time getting them disconnected when you take them off the track. They like to hang in there. But I just wanted to throw that out there, and I didn't want to interrupt earlier when you were talking. Very interesting.
Thank
Really
you.
enjoyed your talk today.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks for your contribution.
Yeah, Steve 87 PSAP. Funny thing I didn't know, but there's a car shop right near me. They only service the Boeing rail cars. That's all I ever see there. Yeah, I wouldn't have even have thought of modeling a car shop, but yeah, I mean, I guess they've got to be all over. Like, I mean,
Yeah, your major railroads, like take Union Pacific for example. Every one of their major yards, especially the ones that have hump yards, there's a car shops nearby, in one side or the other.
so the car shop would, I'm assuming, be what actually swaps the axles and swaps, all
Yes.
the pieces and parts, right? Yeah. So
Yeah, couplers, wheel sets, trucks, bolsters, you name it.
Another interesting thing. Whoops. All right, guys, my chair broke. How about that? I guess it's time to lose weight.
I'm so glad that was on camera, Robert. That was awesome. Man, that was a Blame Heath moment right there.
That was Heath. That's all Heath's fault. So
That was a Blame Heath moment right there. Go ahead, Robert.
Great.
Hold up the chair, Robert. We want to see the chair now. Come on.
The chair. Okay, hold up the chair. Here is the chair. It's just a folding chair.
Oh,
wow.
Oh, jeez.
glad you're not hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. It wasn't that far to the ground, so. What I was going to say before that happened, but is another thing that might, is lacking too is car manufacturers. Like just about 10 miles from here, well, less than 10 miles, is Trinity, where they produce tank cars. So that kind of stuff's kind of lacking, I guess, on people's railroads as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, I don't know if people have engine houses on all their layouts. Would the engine shop also be the car shop, or it would be a totally separate shop?
No, to be totally separate.
Yeah.
On my layout before I started tearing it apart, I had a car shops there, and when I was doing research, a lot of your older railroads that had their own passenger service, you would have your engine facilities, which would be your machine shops to repair your locomotives. You would have your car shops to repair your rolling stock. But then there was another shop called the coach shops, which would be repairing the passenger cars.
Stuff. Yeah.
So you could technically have all three.
Hey, Robert, Rick Bailey's the only one that wants to know if you're okay, so I thought we'd ask. I'm just kidding.
That's great, Rick. Thanks, Rick. I know. I got to feel some love here, right?
If you weren't laughing the whole time, I think we would have all been a little more concerned. But
no, the only thing that got damaged in that was pride.
Yeah, CP368 says he's gonna clip that out and send it to a fail channel.
Hey, I could become viral on YouTube.
Hey, your name is right up there at the top, so people will definitely look you up.
Yeah,
For a moment.
Oh, here we go. Gunderson. Steve 87 PSAP's been to Gunderson up in Portland, Oregon. The well cars on one line, box cars on another line, and barges on the riverside. Oh, interesting. I didn't know Gunderson did the barges too. Yeah.
We don't have a lot of repair shops. The closest where I am is we actually make passenger trains. There's a huge whatever you want to call it, facility out about 5 k's away where we actually make all our new passenger trains. But the only shops that we really have are about in the city. They're actually very few and far between these days here.
Yeah, Andrew Estep, who, if he doesn't start putting more videos on his channel, I'm going to get him on my channel, but he knows so much history about the city. He's saying in New York City, the New York Central passenger car shop was in Mott Haven in the Bronx. That yard served Grand Central, and I'm guessing the Sunnyside yard as well probably does all the Penn Station passenger cars and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But
Interesting
hey, James.
side note, my dad was a machinist for Santa Fe, and my former father-in-law was what they called a carman, which worked in the car shop. And he ended up at the same location in San Bernardino at the Santa Fe shops. So they didn't know each other, but they both worked there at the same time. Of course, there was thousands of people working there.
Yeah. Hey, James, we've been talking about grain and stuff, or not necessarily grain, but ethanol. Are you doing the grain plant for the NMRBO contest?
I'm doing the coal stuff.
Oh, the coal stuff. Oh, well, then we don't need to talk to you.
Am I unmuted? Yeah.
Nice.
No, I'm doing the coal, which not related to petroleum, no matter what all the people with big diesel trucks say.
Yeah, I remembered you had that conveyor belt and stuff, and I wasn't sure if that was for grain or for coal. I didn't remember.
No, only slightly less explosive than grain.
Hey, Rick Bailey or Ian from Lehigh River Subdivision, will you guys find the link for Tom's stream and post that up in the chat for people that want to head over to Tom's after this? I do want to take a minute and just thank all of the people that are either Patreon members or that are members through YouTube directly. And also just thank everyone that has given super chats and super stickers over the last week as well. And before we jump off, let's just take a quick look at Mr. Train Freak's got something he wants to share with us.
I've got a new one.
Ooh. Hey, that'll fit on my layout, Jason.
It's a GP40P-2, so it's the one that's got the steam generator back here on the back end. But there you go.
That's real gold, right?
I wish.
Yeah.
I've got the other two that match it in the caboose.
If it was real gold, you could trade it in and buy a sheet of plywood.
Yeah,
maybe.
If it was real gold, I could get it. I'd trade it in and get a few more, and then trade those in and get a few more, and trade those in and get a few more, and just keep the cycle going. I'd be rich in no time.
Exactly. Boulder Creek, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. It's a Superman super chat. Thank you everyone for being here, but especially thank you to Cliff for taking his time, telling us a little bit about modeling. I did put his email up earlier. I don't think I still have it here, but oh, there we go. If people want to reach out to Cliff, I just dropped his email again in the chat, so people can look him up there. But, oh, and it looks like it removed the email. Why did it remove the email on me? Well, if people want his email and they can't find it in the stream, just reach out to me and I'll get you guys in touch. But thanks again, Cliff, for being here. Thanks to everyone for being up on panel. I really appreciate it. And I will see a lot of you over on Tom's in a little bit. Thanks so much.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Later.
It's all about humanity. all about humanity.